Hi, my name is Brian, and I'm the High Pop Professor, and I'm very excited today. Something amazing just happened very recently, and I made a video like this last December when the entire precious metals set from '97, Donruss Preferred, came for sale at the exact same time, all slabbed. Something else very similar has happened. An entire rare set has just come for sale, every card in the set, and that one is a '93 Donruss Diamond King autographed and encapsulated slabbed. So there was a seller who, in this last month, put the entire '93 Donruss Diamond King autographed slab set for sale. Every card individually listed at 99¢, 7-day auction, let it run. And it's breaking my brain a little bit here. And just as with the other one we did with the precious metal set, this affords us an amazing opportunity to gather some insight, to gather some data, to sort of see how we did a few videos ago, actually more than a few videos ago, we made some 90s power rankings where we kind of, see where certain players stack and rank against other ones on the totem pole. This gives us a beautiful opportunity to do the same thing within this set. So, out of the 30 cards, 31 that were listed, that were sold, what happened? Where did they finish up? We're going to go ahead and turn the camera around. We'll show some pictures. We'll show some surprises on where certain cards finished. And I will showcase a few of my own cards that I have from this set, a couple of which I was able to pick up from this seller and this opportunity. So we'll turn the camera around, come with me, we'll take a look at some cards.
All right, so before we start looking at the list of cards, I wanted to put out there that all these cards that sold have some important similarities. They're all on-card autos, not a single one is a sticker auto. They're all signed in bold Sharpie, usually a blue Sharpie, and all of them by the seller were BAS encapsulated, Beckett. They were all run as 7-day auctions that either ended on July 20th or July 27th, with the exception of the Puckett that was a 10-day auction ending on August 3rd. And every single card from this set was sold by this seller except for one. There was a Griffey that was actually not included with this. However, there was one that sold not that long ago on eBay that I'm going to go ahead and use, and it was a PSA Auto 10, buy it now. And so here's the list. And as we can see, so we're going to go down the list, talk about them a little bit. I'd like to show pictures of all these beautiful cards and discuss them a little bit, particularly paying attention to some of what I would call anomalies or surprises. And then we can sort of make our own power ranking, our own tier list for these players and at least their values in this set. So here we go. So the first two are kind of in a tier all on their own. You can call this the very tippy top tier. And so Kirby Puckett. Now the Puckett sold for more than anyone else in this set, and that's not too surprising. This one sold for $615, so where the auction ended. However, I do have a suspicion that the previous sale probably had a, which was my buy it now, probably had an impact on that. My buy it now was $399, and the sale before that was for $1,279. And I think something important to realize about this too, though, this Puckett sale of $615, if you look very carefully, this autograph is actually not as strong as most of the other ones here. I think it was stronger than the $12.79 sale. It was less, it wasn't that it was streaky, but this autograph, it actually was a little bit beaded up. It was a little bit bubbled, and I suspect that had the autograph been more of like a 10 auto, really strong or really bold, I think the price would have been higher than $615. I think it would have gone to $800 or maybe even higher, who knows. All right, and along with Puckett is another guy who I think would be a little bit of a surprise here. I wasn't really surprised by Puckett finishing highest, but Darren Dalton finishing at $521. Also another player who is no longer with us, no longer around to sign autographs, and and a very tough one, elusive, very elusive to find especially if you're going for a set. So I am not going for the set. I'm looking for more of a, more of a substantial flight. Flight collecting. You collect just a couple from each set, but yeah. So not one that I'm personally interested in, but I am interested in insofar as it was selling for way more than I would have anticipated. All right. So beyond that, we have the next tier of Ken Griffey Jr. There was a PSA Auto 10 Buy It Now that sold for $350 fairly recently. It was not included. This was the one card not included for sale by this specific seller during this sort of set sell-off. But I'm going to throw it in there as a tier of his own. So Griffey is maybe for once the second tier in value. And then after this, we have Craig Biggio, Eddie Murray, Robin Yount, and Mark McGwire, and also Brady Anderson, which is curious to include him there. They were in this next tier, and the prices there. The Griffey being $350, the Biggio sold for $142.50, Eddie Murray at $125.15, Robin Yount for $112.50, McGwire for $104.50, and the Brady Anderson sold for $102.50. So you have a lot of these Hall of Fame tier caliber guys, albeit Brady Anderson and Mark McGwire are not in the Hall of Fame, but they constitute the third tier down from the top. And yeah, they had sold sort of their finished sales hammer price was between $100 and $142.50. Following that, we had the other tier that also has a bunch of Hall of Famers in there included. And so the next tier down was Oral Hershiser at $94, Roberto Alomar at $83, Tom Glavine at $77, Roger Clemens at $73, and Eric Karros at $70. And that one is a surprise for me too. We have our 92 Rookie of the Year. And, I hadn't really expected Eric Karros to finish quite as high as he did, much like Brady Anderson. I know Brady Anderson, did have a 50 home run year in there, but still I was a little surprised. And so that was the fourth tier of these sort of sales. Then we have the fifth tier, which also has a surprise in there. But keep continuing down our list, we had Gary Sheffield, finished at $53.78. Ryan Sandberg, rest in peace, at $51. Carlos Baerga at $41. Cecil Fielder at $32.89. Larry Walker at $32. That surprised me. Pat Listach at $28, also a Rookie of the Year. Eddie Van Slyke at $27. And Robin Ventura at $26, although this autograph was a little bit streaky. And then finishing up the bottom tier that we had here were all basically ones that finished for effectively the cost of encapsulation or the cost of authentication. So Bip Roberts at $20.50, Luis Polonia at $19.50, Roberto Kelly at $19.41, Bob Tewksbury at $18.50, Nigel Wilson at $18.50, Dick Perez Checklist at $18.50, Wally Joyner at $16, David Need at $15.50, Bill Swift at $11.50, and tied was Juan Gonzalez at also $11.50. Okay, that surprised me. Juan Gonzalez, yeah, he may not be in the Hall of Fame, but he was one of the most feared hitters of the 90s. And so to have him finish, tied for dead last on a list like this is just really, really surprising to me. But okay, here's where we are. All right, so now one of the criticisms I think of that you have to be careful about, anyone who does a video like this, now this is nice because you have one snapshot that was all done. All these sales were done at the exact same time, effectively within a week or two of each other. They are not the only sales. So something interesting that I want to point out there is, just like Puckett had a few previous sales, the McGwire that sold for $104.50, there was another one that sold not that long ago that was a sticker auto, and that was a Buy It Now that sold for $195. So sticker auto, you would think it would be less than this, but I just want to throw that out there. If you're a seller and you're trying to maximize your sale price, instead of an auction, you might want to do a higher Buy It Now and take offers. So you might want. It just surprised me a little bit. And really, to be honest with you, I was surprised the McGuire auction didn't finish closer to that. I would have thought the auction would have been, closer to 150 or even 200. But anyway, same thing. We had a couple other ones. There was a Ryan Sandberg. Aside from the one that sold for $51, there was another sale that was an unauthenticated one that sold for $42.95 not that long ago. Again, unauthenticated, no COA on there. And also, there was another Larry Walker. And one of the reasons why I was so surprised that this one sold for $32 already encapsulated was because the other sale was actually my duplicate that I sold, and I sold it for $74.95 unauthenticated. An unslabbed, raw, no COA. And so, the fact that one that was slabbed up and looked beautiful only sold for 32, less than half of that. That was just a big surprise. So anyway, so looking at these tiers, I think that for me it was the ones that were the biggest surprises here. I think some would say Puckett, but that wasn't too surprising for me. Although statistically, I think his placement on the list I think is significant, being the first. But Darren Dalton surprised me. Brady Anderson really surprised me. Eric Karros surprised me. Larry Walker surprised me. And Juan Gonzalez. Walker and Gonzalez surprised me for being so low, and the other one surprised me for being as high as they were, with the exception of Puckett. And so I wanted to go through and just sort of display a little bit of the cards that I have from this exact set. I'm not going for all of them. In fact, I have most of the ones that I'm going for, but here's that Juan Gonzalez that finished last place. This was not the one from the actual sale, but this is my own one that I had already. And here is my keeper, Larry Walker. And I just love these. I mean, everything about anything in bold autograph and blue Sharpie, that's just works out. Looks so good. I love it. And here's my Ryan Sandberg that I was fortunate enough to receive back last year from TTM. He will be missed. He was a gem, a legend, and dearly loved by everyone. And here's my Clemens, the Rocket. And here, let me see if I can get there we go, get the entire card there, not just there we are. That's better. All right, working up through the tier list here. Here's my copy of my Tom Glavine. And really was pumped up. I did pick up this Alomar from that listing. So this was one of the two that I was able to pick up from this seller's bunch of auctions. But it wasn't the last of the ones that I picked up from this seller. Here's my copy of my McGuire. And this is one of the most I've ever spent on a card that was uncertified. I actually sent this set and got this authenticated myself. And Robin Yount. Same with this one. I bought this one also uncertified, but sent it into Beckett in a separate authentication order. And then this one, Craig Biggio. Woo! This is the one. I did pick this one up from this set of listings. And so that was my second pickup. And then moving along, we'll finish up with Ken Griffey Jr. and, of course, Kirby Puckett. All right. So thank you for coming along with me with these tier lists. Again, these tier lists, just because this is what they sold on one given day, yes, all at the same time, it doesn't really ensure that anything like this is going to necessarily happen in the future. If everything came for sale again next month, who's to say where Brady Anderson or Darren Dalton or Roberto Alomar, anyone would finish, or Larry Walker on a given day. Just like with the NCAA Final Four brackets, you don't always pick the higher seed team to win, because that doesn't always happen. In reality, there's always upsets, and so yeah, if we want to say it's an upset that Brady Anderson finished higher than, you know, Roger Clemens, okay, so be it. So thanks for watching. Thanks for coming along, and we'll see you in the next one.